Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, joining in. And as we say, if you choose peace and happiness now, instead of living in past grievances, mourning, anxiety, depressions, and upsets, join us here. Join us Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And I did invite this evening Diane Eisenman, who I've known for a few years. She, we both attended the Course in Miracles conference held by Reverend Tony Ponticello. Those people who went, you know what this is. And we got to sharing, and as it turns out, Diane has just gone through uh, her husband Alan's passing, and she sent me a video of the wake where all of Alan's friends showed up all the way from England in the United Kingdom. He was a member of NASA, and a lot of the people from Houston and NASA all showed up to celebrate Alan. And so I invited Diane to talk a little about the celebration of what happened during that wake. So Diane, you're on.
Okay. Well, it was during the middle of COVID, right? And it was like February 10th that he passed away. And the only thing we could really do for a wake was online. And I thought, well, that's not a bad deal because we know so many people and we have so many relatives that are not local that it actually would allow participation from a wide range of people that would like to celebrate his life. And each of them knew like a different part of him. No one really, except me, probably, and I don't think I even saw all of him, but he had so many different interests that somebody who went scuba diving with him didn't know that he was skiing or didn't know that he was hanging on the edge of the cliff of the Grand Canyon with his fingernails. Uh, there was just so much about him that was he lived life to the fullest, exploring Earth, and he was a confirmed atheist. He he which will be surprising when I read this little line I didn't even tell Dove about, but um, it's he really was in his body, and I saw right through his body to this incredibly beautiful soul that was contained within this body. um, and I just as he was getting less and less able, I was learning how to focus more and more on who he was as a spirit, and really practicing ignoring what his outer symptoms were, what his attitude was, all those things that made him very difficult to live with. But nonetheless, when I could enjoy that incredible spirit behind it, um, I thought that that really was my teaching for this whole experience. So, what I wanted people to share was his great spirit and the wonderful things that he had done that were fun. So instead of a wake that was focused on God and on things like that, I was just saying, let's enjoy who Alan was, because that's really who God is. And that's really what we're supposed to be doing here. And he was probably doing a better job of that than me.
Mhm.
so so I invited one person from each of his hobbies to talk about him in that experience with them. So we had one person that was a scuba diver who did scuba with Alan, and they also did underwater photography together. And Alan has some amazing underwater shots. It's just amazing that I just treasure. And then we had someone who he took up skiing, and he loved to go to Aspen, and he did ski classes. And in a ski class, he met his first cousin on a chairlift who had a house in Aspen. And so we became fast friends, and Aspen became a big part of our activities. I didn't like to ski very much, but in the summertime they have a music festival, and that was awesome. So we either went skiing in the winter or music festival in the summer, and so cousin Laverne was there and was able to tell that story, how they met on a ski lift and how they had this fun conversation, and they discovered by the time they got off the ski lift they were hugging each other. um, so and Alan loved to go hiking in the Sierras. He did a lot of that. So we had somebody there talking about the hiking he did. And then one of his, his best friends, his I can't describe it. This gentleman is probably 45 to Alan's 87. I mean, there's a huge generation gap. And when they got together, they just talked a blue streak. And Christian is from Denmark. So Alan helped Christian import himself to the US. And then Christian's wife, Dorda, became a very close friend of mine. So between Alan and Christian and me and Dorda, we were like a really spiritually very, very close match. And they had 4 children here. And then I just was really surprised that the morning Alan died, within about 15 minutes, I had gotten an email from Dorda saying, "How is Alan?" And I mean, I got goosebumps just thinking about it. Alan had just passed, and I talked to Dorda a little later, and she said that she and Christian and their oldest daughter all had intuited and felt Alan at exactly the time that he passed. So Christian he kind of took the horns, so to speak, of this whole memorial service, and he wrote an epitaph that was going to be published in the JPL newsletter because Alan had worked at JPL for 46 years. So he had deep roots there. So Christian wrote this thing, and then he started like taking the lead on this memorial service. He said, "Well, let me get about 4 or 5 people at JPL to talk about his life and what he did and what his work was." And it turns out that his relatives who were on the memorial service really had no idea what he did for work, and they were all really interested in what was going on. So Christian lined up like 4 or 5 speakers that talked about different things that Alan had done at work. And, this just went on, and it went on for an hour and a half. And I thought, oh, this is really a long time, but it wasn't. People were so engrossed in who Alan was and what he did, and everybody knew a small part but didn't know the whole. So it was a sense of Alan as a whole being. And that was the memorial service. And there's a second half to this, but for this part, for the memorial service, Alan his heart was very tender, but he didn't let it show. And about 2 years before he passed, 2 cats came into the backyard who actually belonged to the neighbor and moved in. And Alan became so moved with the cats. I've never seen him that loving and that tender. He never was much with children, but these 2 cats were like his whole life. They became the center of his spiritual life, and it was absolutely his spiritual life. And so he found this book. It's called The Traveling Cat Chronicles. and it's by a woman in Japan, and it's just a short little book. But he read this book like 5 times, and he underlined it, he highlighted things, and his when he came to the end of the book, I mean, it's all yellow. I don't know if you can see that, but he yellowed it all, and it's such a beautiful thing. And this is from somebody who absolutely claimed to be an atheist. My story will be over soon, but it's not something to be sad about. As we count up the memories from one journey, we head off on another, remembering those who went ahead, remembering those who will follow after. And someday we will meet all those people again out beyond the horizon.
Wow.
I still have
So
tears.
beautiful. Was that in the Cat Chronicles, or he wrote that?
No, it's the last page of the
Oh,
book.
wow.
It's just, one short little paragraph.
Beautiful.
But it's all yellowed. The whole thing is highlighted, but
Mhm.
but it was so incredible. So that was the ceremony we did, and then there was the ashes, and I decided, Alan and I traveled a lot. We like to do unusual things, so I wanted this to be a little unusual, and I don't want the ashes sitting in my living room, and um, and so I found out that I could rent a boat, and we could take the ashes out into the Long Beach Harbor out here, and um, the boat people would facilitate the spreading of the ashes. So we did a big thing, and it was only about 3 weeks ago um, that we did it, and it was it was the perfect day. The bluest water, the bluest sky, the little puffy clouds. I mean, it was so perfect, and we had 28 people there. We had over 100 people on the website when we first did the first memorial, and then this one, we had 28 people, and they provided like flower petals to throw in for the after the ashes, and when the ashes came out, went over, they just blew into a beautiful cloud. It was a puffy cloud, and it gently landed on the water, and eventually it made a circle on the water, and it looked like the shape of a dolphin on the end of the circle.
Wow.
It was really beautiful. And
Mm.
then my cousin, I had invited people to bring a reading or something if they wanted to do something as they threw the flower petals over. My cousin, who doesn't know Alan that well, and this is a cousin who I don't know that well. I have 36 first cousins on my dad's side, and this is one of 36. And he grew up in Canada, so I didn't really know him. But he's now living about 40 miles south of where I live. And he spent 2 days writing a poem for Alan. And this, I want to read it to you, but it's like um, he himself, my cousin Clinton, is a 20-year Navy retired officer, and so water was part of his life, and he was a scuba diver, and he resonated with Alan in that regard. So he wrote a poem. His wife said he spent 2 days thinking about it and writing it. And it blew everybody away because we knew the essence of Alan. We knew he's an engineer at JPL. Um, we knew his kind of happy-go-lucky thing. He was good at telling jokes and all that. So he called it Alan Suspended. And suspended was his experience of being underwater, scuba diving, and being in zero gravity, where you're absolutely suspended in the water. And he said it's the same as the astronaut up in the ocean. And it's the same as us being not on the earth, just being in spirit. I don't think Clinton may have known that, but we did. Okay, so he said he started out with an inspiration, which was the first line here, that he just wanted to get started. He's not a poet, he's an engineer, right? He's never done this before. That was even more miraculous. And he says, if I were a turtle alone in the sea, I'd swim up to Alan and ask, how do you be? I am sure he would say, I am excellent, my friend. I just wish this experience didn't have to end. Well, as a turtle, I can assure you, I enjoy my time on land. It is sure fun to spend some time in the sand. The ocean is fantastic. I agree with you on that. But remember, Alan, down here, you can't have a cat. Then Alan would roar, can't have a cat? How silly are thee? For I am an engineer. I make the impossible be. Now interred in Davy Jones' locker, and with King Neptune's help, Alan swims for eternity with his cats through the kelp.
Beautiful. Yay.
So that's it.
Oh,
You know,
thank you, Diane, for bringing such beauty to all the subjects, holding someone in such a unique way, in appreciation and love, and allowing the community in to love on you and love on him. It's just, the expansion is just beautiful. Thank
yeah.
you. Anybody else want to say something? Can just unmute.
I just wanted to say thank you to Diane. It was so beautiful for her to share that story with us about her husband. So thank you, Diane. It was beautiful.
You're welcome. Thank you for allowing me to share it.
Oh, we're the richer for it. Well, if nobody else wants to speak, I will start. Is that all right, Dove? Yeah. Okay, so just as a transition, Cindy, would you put up that slide that I sent you, and then we'll do our meditation. I think Cindy's there. She is. You moved on my screen. Yeah. It's coming. So Dove, I sent you this a few minutes ago. I did this slide this afternoon. It's coming. Here we go. Okay, can we make it bigger and present? There we go. All right, so it's so beautiful that we started with Alan, because through Diane's story, we know that Alan is in the oneness. And many of you are in mastery classes with Teachers of God. And Dove and I listened, Dove was there and I listened later to a wonderful class they just did on portals, doorways back to the oneness. And last week here, we looked at this slide over here that was a tug of war. And tug of war for me now represents the world, because as Krishnamurti said, there are always problems in the world. But if there are no problems in your mind, there are no problems. And whatever is on the other end of your rope, whether it's an issue with your body or an issue with a person or an issue with your credit card, or just doesn't matter. And we often have themes around our issue. It's either with the body or with work or with your money or with a person. They tend to be a pattern. So you might take your local awareness now and think about and feel about and notice what might have upset you today? And even if it was a small upset, like a jar wouldn't open, but anything that takes you out of the oneness and puts you back into a struggle. And by the way, I don't think there's a bigger struggle than death, because it's behind a lot of fears. And if we can welcome what's part of life, the passing as well as the birthing, it seems to be a big opening. Now, if we look over here, the letting go, you see the hand in the rope. There is no struggle if we let go. Is that right? And I think this is what we want to be talking more about. Dov and I were talking about bringing in examples of what does it mean to let go of the rope. And for me, what's become clear, and I'll give you an example. What's become clear is that I don't have a new answer before I let go of the rope. That would be easy. If we had a new solution to a problem, go back to here, that wouldn't be letting go of the rope, because you just have a new solution. And so you're still in a dance with whatever the issue is. Recently, I had a number of things that were big on my calendar. My daughter had a surgery. Then after helping her, there was a date that I was going to fly home to Seattle. And then the next day I was hosting for Jennifer Hadley in her Sundays with Spirit. And then Monday I was going to a grief group, and Tuesday I was coming here. So the only day to fly was Saturday, and Monday I was getting my tooth fixed that chipped. So my rope was my organization, my schedule, the plan. I was in the flow, but I was holding a rope that had my schedule. So can you see it gets subtler? The rope gets subtler. You don't really see that I'm holding onto a tug of war until I don't get to go on the plane. Daughter's not doing well, needs hydration, can't leave because it came to help. That makes no sense. So what I noticed is the minute there was tension, when I found out that my husband had rightfully canceled our reservation, I said yes to that. Yes to that, meaning not I agree that we shouldn't go home. The yes is beyond an opinion. It's beyond a preference. It's allowing, and even that word isn't right. It's being open to what is. I think that's the best word, but we don't know yet. That's what I want to say about this place. We don't know yet how it's going to all work out, but it's being open to that and returning to oneness in the blink of an eye. And that's where Dov will talk about trust, I'm sure. But what I want to add to the portals is later on, I want to talk about the exits back to our personality, so we can be in oneness, and everybody experiences oneness. Sometimes I'm in a class and people will raise their hand and they'll say, well, I never experienced the awareness that you're talking about with a capital A, or I just don't know what that oneness is all about. But every single day, right before you fall asleep, when you're not asleep yet, you go to the oneness. You don't call it anything. It's just raise your hand if you recognize that empty space where you're no longer in the world, right? You're no longer in the world, but you're not asleep yet. That's the oneness. You're not going over your day. You're not struggling with anything. All right. Anybody else ever arrive somewhere and you don't remember driving there? Raise your hand if you've done that. Right? That's the oneness. That's the knowing. So even when we're struggling with the tug of war, there is that local awareness. For all of us that have had mind training with A Course in Miracles, we notice we're stressed. We notice, if we want to, that we're out of the oneness, we've exited. And if we let go of the rope, even without a solution, there's a portal, an open door back to oneness that has no opinion and maybe no solution except experience in allowing life to take over and show us. So I'm showing this picture here of a revolving door because it's an image I haven't thought of before, because we all go to the oneness, even if we don't recognize and acknowledge it. So let's go there now in our meditation. If you would take a deep breath and allow Diane's beautiful stories about people loving on her and loving on her husband through poetry and tributes. And that wonderful last page in the cat book of her husband, Alan, being an agnostic or an atheist or whatever he claimed to be, and knowing that oneness. We all know it. It's the knowing that we're alive. And right now, if you would join inside your head. I like to start with the head because often we think we are our thoughts and our feelings, which we imagine in this world is processed with our heads. Small mind, small personality, conditioned self. And we welcome that. We welcome that personality that might be reactive, that might be withdrawn, that might be outgoing, that might be quiet. We welcome whatever incarnation, whatever localization of the one that we appear to be. And let's fill our heads with breath, with light. And the light can be light and clear, or it can be like the violet flame. And let's move down from our heads through our necks to our chests and surround our hearts, our big hearts for Alan and for Diane and for ourselves as we appear to be different, and in the knowingness that in the oneness we're the same. Let's fill our chests and our abdomen and our bellies with the light. And let's make sure today that we go to our backs and fill our backs with light. From the back of our head, down the back of our neck, down to our backs, down to our buttocks, down our legs, down to our feet, And if we're sitting in a chair, let's even include the chair. And then let's wiggle our toes to feel the ground. And let's move from whatever ground you're on, whether it's a carpet or a floor, to the ground outside, beneath your apartment or your house, or if you're sitting outside. Let's imagine that we're on the earth and we're thanking the earth for all that it does in holding us up and in connecting us. And let's take in the plants and the trees and the space. We often notice objects, trees and flowers. Let's take in the space and the weather, and whether there are clouds covering the sky, let's know the sky is there with our oneness. And let's just take a moment to appreciate our part in the sky and the planets as a puzzle piece. And the whole is the oneness, is the earth and the planets and the sky and the weather and the ground and the soil and the trees and the flowers and you. And instead of asking who are we? Let's ask, what are we? And are we what science says? We're energy bundles relating to other energy bundles that are part of the oneness. And in the next breath, with the gratitude for the oneness that requires no mind training, no improvement, no doing, only that we allow ourselves to be empty. And maybe we have it backwards, that this is reality, and we can hold that life that sometimes presents airplanes that don't take off or that we can't take when make the schedule work, or whatever is on the end of your tug of war. Maybe that's our day sleep. Maybe that's our day dreaming. And when we nighttime dream, we accept it. We take care of ourselves. Did we have a nightmare? Oh, we need to acknowledge it. We need to calm ourselves and say, that was a dream. And the same can be done with whatever appearances happen in this formerly called reality, which we're now considering reversing. And we're sentient beings, we're feeling bodies. And so when we touch a hot iron, we're supposed to feel and react to the hot iron or the stove. But feeling and reacting does not mean that we have to become reactive. That would be back to the personality or the conditioned self, which we can drop. It has no hold when we're interested in the oneness. So, with gratitude and appreciation for this time that we could spend in the oneness, we take our time coming back into this room, and with soft eyes, we'll behold the other puzzle pieces of the oneness that are on our screen. Thank you, everybody. Over to you, Deb.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Wow. That was oneness, an experience of just being here. What popped out at me is that thought that when you're driving and you're not even aware, you're in a place called no opinion. You mentioned that there's no opinion. Recently, I realized that the kindest thing you can do for yourself is let go of being right. You know, as Jesus says in A Course in Miracles, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Choose one. You can't have both. And right is just having an opinion. It's the ego's opinion that it has an investment in something in the world saying that the world is very real and I'm right. The kindest thing you can do is to let go of being right. You automatically return to happy. And happy is just a place where your mind doesn't have opinions and everything happens perfectly. Literally, you're perfectly cared for. That's how you can get from here to there without remembering that you didn't stop at a stop sign, or maybe you did stop, but you just don't remember it. Yeah, so I just wanted to share that, Rosalind.
It's beautiful. Dev and I were at a Sunday service. I don't know if any of you were there with Jennifer Hadley last Sunday. I was the host, not the speaker. And the speaker couldn't continue. Her audio was not working. And that was a moment where upset could have happened. But with more experience living in the oneness, I didn't know how, I didn't have a solution. I didn't have a talk ready. I knew I was the one because I was the host. It wasn't going to be somebody else. And I just started talking. I'm not even sure if there was a theme, or everybody said it was great, but it was like driving the car. And we're so supported. But even when we're struggling, we know we're struggling and we don't honor that knowingness. There is a knowingness that's beyond our brains. And that I would like you to say something more about trust. In trusting, how do we trust, Dove? And do you have an example from this week when you stepped out of oneness and how you returned?
Well, yeah, trust, as the Course says, trust would settle every problem now. And we just don't trust it because we think we need to do something, basically. It's my willingness to just be here now, to accept what is now, is what we're trusting in. We're trusting in the presence of now without the thought I have to do something. And what you did last Sunday was Brittany Shawley, who was the featured speaker. And I think that somehow her Zoom just didn't work and she disappeared. And you just trusted that everything was given to you. That's my experience. Trust means that you're perfectly cared for and every word is given to you. You find that in the final lesson 362 to 365. It says, Holy Spirit, I put you in charge at my request, knowing the direction that you lead brings me peace. If I need a word, you'll give it. And if it's a thought, that will be given as well. And it was just a still and tranquil mind that is mine as well. Whereas the ego thought system says, well, I have to do something in order to look good. When he says, I need do nothing, these 4 words will save you a century of temptation. That's exactly what it is. I need do nothing to be totally supported.
Mhm. Wonderful. Does anybody have an example of entering and exiting? That's what I really want to convey today, is that we have portals and doorways, and we know what keeps us in the light. And we also know what takes us out. And so, do we want to continue the revolving door, or do we want to claim? And that's a big word for me. It's been very helpful. I claim the oneness. I made up a new name. I'm a oneness coach. Never heard that before. But it's part of my claiming something. Otherwise, this is a nice state, or it's a nice concept, a nice theory. And one of the ways that we step out is by saying, we're not there yet. Oh, I'm not there yet. I'm doing better, but I'm not there yet. Who does that? Who's said that before? I've said it before.
Yeah, the ego says it. The ego says it.
Right, right. But this is something different. It's like not like it's noticing, like Dove said, that is the conditioned self. And so by noticing that, that can be a decision, not going to say that anymore, not even to myself. I am going to claim the times that I return to the oneness. And it's so gratifying. Who has an example of either entering or exiting the oneness and would like to share? Diane, do you have that sometimes about the grief where you go to past or future and then you have to stay in the oneness?
Yeah, really.
No?
Yeah, I do.
Oh,
I
good.
do. Yeah, yeah. It's and now it's like my thoughts have. I had an interesting process of being really disgusted with Alan's behavior at the end, and um, and I was trying to move out of that and move into his joy and his beautiful image. And after he died, I couldn't get there. I was like, I just was so disgusted with the way he was and the way he treated me, and that I didn't cry. I didn't have tears. I kind of removed him totally from my presence.
Mhm.
And I figured I did the best I could with memorial service, and the other one wasn't happening for a while. But one day, and it happened during that conference that Dove was talking about, Marianne Williamson was speaking, and she was healing somebody in the group, but it was just a general thing. And I felt something shift in me. And I didn't know what it was until a couple days later, I realized that I couldn't think of anything negative about Alan. After having been totally absorbed in it for like a long time, I couldn't. And instead, I moved into this incredible space of appreciation.
Wow.
And that's all I could think of, was all the wonderful things that we shared.
Wow.
And that's when the tears came.
Mm.
That's when I felt back to oneness.
Mhm.
It was like, it was wholeness, because we did these incredible experiences. A lot of it was travel and going to very wonderful places that were inspiring. But that's where my wholeness came back and my oneness. And it was not just oneness with Alan then, but it was oneness with the space, with all the people in the spaces. And even on the boat, when Clinton was reading the suspended Allen poem, there was a moment there where everybody on that boat was with one heart, that I could feel that one heart, and it just expanded and it grew throughout the day. I've never seen so many people so happy all at once.
Wow.
And it was just in that moment, and it lasted for the whole day pretty much.
Wow.
And
The word that comes to me is that you completed something with Alan.
yeah,
You did. And you're also reminding me what made the biggest change for me. Not everybody here knows my story. My daughter passed unexpectedly, and I was doing the whole grief thing, that the stages and suffering and my life is over. And I was shaken from the outside. And in that millisecond, I could experience that the truth was, in this second, I wasn't suffering. It was just the past and the future. Like you say, the stories of how he treated you and so on brought in more and more, whatever that was. But the reason I'm bringing it up now is I was so touched, and still am, by people's love. I was broken open, and I predict that this love that you took in that day on the boat, you will experience more and more and more, because it just doesn't end when you're open to that level of joy, as Dove would say, or love, just when the heart is open.
yeah,
So
you move into certainty,
yes,
you move into knowing,
yes.
and
Isn't that
nothing
beautiful, everybody? I hope
nothing can
you're
take
all,
that away.
yeah. Raise your hand if you're responding to that beautiful experience that Diane has had. Yes. Thank you for sharing it.
Thank you for sharing with your daughter. I mean, that's
Yeah.
I'd like to share something.
Please.
Uh, I was listening to Rosalind talk about you have to claim it. There are two lessons in the course that says you must claim it. One is on grace. God's grace is given to me. Let me claim it now. That's lesson 168. And the other is the name of God is my own. Let me claim it. And that's 183. And then when Diane was speaking, she said, when I experienced that Marianne process that she was doing with somebody, there was a shift. And she said, all of a sudden, I appreciated. And I realized that appreciation is claiming.
Yeah.
When you appreciate something, you're claiming it. The
Yeah.
Course actually says you cannot love what you do not appreciate. He tells you that. So claiming it almost sounds like, well, it's like, but what do you mean by claiming it? Appreciating what it is that's given to you. If you don't appreciate it, you don't have the experience of its presence.
I
Yeah.
love that, Dove. It's so beautiful. Appreciation is a very, very important portal. It's a portal.
Yes.
Well, we know gratitude is, and appreciation is a synonym. It's opening. It brings us to the oneness. And the Course also says that language, doesn't do it. It's a symbol. The opposite of claiming is dissing it. And what I see is the danger of the meditations that we all experience. Did everybody feel a little more peace with the meditation, a little more relaxation? Raise your hand if you did. And then what I often hear is that was such a nice meditation, but not claiming it as truth, saying it's dissing it by saying it's a meditation state, like a moment that means nothing. And so that's why I like to use that word that's not usually a spiritual word, although It should be, it could be. Because it takes that owning it. Like, this is who I am. If I am what God is, I like to turn that around and say, could you be one with God is what you are? Oh, something comes up for people then, right? That the unworthiness comes up, and then we just notice it and say, okay, back to the oneness.
May I share something? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were finished.
No, go ahead, Raf. Rafe?
Well, I just wanted to get back to about the what you said before about when you're out of it and you're caught up in your mind is doing all kinds of stuff and you lose the sense of oneness. As soon as you catch yourself, as soon as you notice that, then you get back into being the awareness and that of which you are aware. And you're right, and it only takes a second or less. It happened to me on the 4th of July. We were with some friends in the backyard, sitting on chairs, watching fireworks. And my mind wanted to make enemies out of everybody sitting there for some, just was having too good a time, I guess. And I caught it immediately. And I said, oh, I see what it's doing. It's trying to find, make these people into, they're separate from me and they're enemies. And I caught it right away. And right away, I just saw them all as the light of divine love that we all are. And the whole thing just melted away. And a big smile went back on my face. And it really literally took a second. And that's all it takes. Because that's eternal. That second is eternally now. And all the rest of the stuff is just mental gibberish.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I love that you called it an it, because I think when we say my ego, now we're, solidifying the identification with it. At least say the ego, but I like even better is it. I like to say conditioned self because I have I don't really want to own a conditioned self. So anybody else want to share? I heard there are a lot of people who like to talk in this group. Somebody told me that. Cindy, do you have an example?
I just came out of an watching awareness exercise. So I've been sort of floating. So it's hard for me to go and touch not being in that space right now.
Mm-hmm.
With that, I moved right out of that conscious awareness, watching awareness experience with friends. One of which is usually there, but wasn't today. Sally, in the sanctuary. So I'm like floating.
And do you have a practice that that brings you back to awareness if you?
Well, it's so funny because I was just we were talking in another meeting. I begin my practice before I get out of bed, right? So I often wake up to a busy mind and I've slowed things down to the point where I notice that, like, I move into consciousness and I hear a mind that's attempting to make plans for the day or list problems. So before I open my eyes in the morning, I simply state, my eyes, my hand, my eyes, my tongue, my hands, my feet today have but one purpose. And your will is mine. And I breathe into that and I welcome what's there. And I do not open my eyes. I do not feed the cat. I do not go to the bathroom. I do nothing until I feel that connection. And at this point, and then, the next, I am a student of Lisa Natoli, right? So literally I make, I'm connected, I make my coffee, I sit outside and I begin my day. I get up at sometimes 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. So by the time the day has started, I've already immersed myself in the teachings for a couple hours, and I've slowed my thinking down so that I catch it before it becomes a problem.
Mhm.
I've been listening to Eckhart Tolle, so the Power Now, and Susan Telford, reminded me this idea of watching your thoughts like a cat watches a mouse hole. That I heard Eckhart. I was like, I heard that for the first time over 20 years ago, and I'm now, because I begin my day immersed in all of these teachings and all of these practices. I can see the thoughts, and they make me laugh now. They just do, God is or God isn't, and God is. And so there is, I also have Dove's voice in my head, trust. I just trust. I know I'm perfectly cared for. So I catch the mind trying to tell me I'm not, things like what Raph was sharing. I catch them. I catch them almost all the time before they take root. And it's just so cool. And the more I catch them, and the more I just step back and pause and watch in awareness and watch them disappear, the more entertaining it gets.
Mhm. That's beautiful.
And the more entertaining it gets, the easier it gets.
Yes.
Because it's not real. If I'm perfectly cared for, I've heard Dove say it to me. He only needed to say it to me 200 times before it, it's sort of marinated in my cells. But if I'm perfectly cared for and all is well and there is no conflict, then whenever that arises in the mind, it can't be true. And when I sit back and look at it, call it out, it just goes away.
Mhm. I love that you said you got onto a pattern. You picked one pattern. You picked the pattern of waking up with a busy mind. And you said, I'm going to bring awareness to that pattern, because the way I heard that is a noticing of the localization of Cindy, that is a claiming of a turnaround. If I go back to awareness and slow that busy thinking mind, I'm going to have the kind of day that I would like. I'm going to give the day to God. I'm going to be a vehicle, right?
I've really learned that it's a lot easier to begin the day in peace and keep it there than to move yourself back to peace from chaos. And there was one day last week, it must have just been spirit, setting me up. For some reason, I didn't do that. And it was simple. For some reason, I decided, or I watched myself get up, brush my teeth, do the bathroom stuff, I was making my coffee and realizing I didn't feel well. And it was all, and then I realized that I skipped those 30 minutes or those 30 seconds or whatever it was in bed. It's the Princess and the Pea kind of thing. I don't have, I've become so sensitive to the slight shifts in the energy space that just not handing the day over before I got out of bed. I'm making my coffee 15 minutes later and I could feel the disconnect, at which point I walked away. I sat on my couch. It took about 45 seconds, connected, and then sunk right back into it.
So this is exactly what I was trying to display on that diagram in the beginning, that slide, that noticing how we enter or exit, we'll do it in similar ways because we're patterned people. And, maybe not every day we'll do it the same way. But for me, because I used to be obese, if I eat food that I didn't want, because if I get mindless, I'll just put food in my mouth as a reaction to the busyness. And if I didn't want it, the mind will start going, that's a way to step out of oneness. Because I don't, that kind of thinking is not oneness. It's too much thinking, just like you're saying. So I would bring the local awareness more to that than I would to how I wake up, because I seem to wake up in the oneness. So everybody has our own way. And that's what I'm hoping that we'll notice, maybe even in the next week. How do we enter? What are our portals? What are our practices or our systems, or the ways that we enter and the ways that we exit? I know we're at time. Dov, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I wanted to say that for me, what works is, instead of taking anything seriously, actually have that inner smile that's always there, really. And actually, it's in your gentle laughter the healing happens. So if you take anything seriously, it's the ego taking it seriously. It really is. Spirit looks and sees nothing is there, which is really the source of the gentle laughter.
And
Thanks.
that's the letting go of going to the smile is letting go of the rope.
Yes.
Yes, it ends it right there. You're back to oneness right there.
I am not pulling on it anymore.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. Do you want to end it with any more words, Dov? Are you complete?
I'm complete. You can find much more at rosalindrock.com, which is Rosalind's site, and also One Mind Foundation, which I share with John Mundy and people at ACIM gather. Thank you all so much. Thank you so much, Cindy, for being here for all of us. Thank you.
We love you.
Thank
Cindy.
you all.
Thank
Peace and
you,
love.
everybody.
Ew,
Bye.
love.